throttle. 170, 180, 190, 200, 360 kilowatt power output, 220. Oh my goodness, 230, 240, 250. We are hauling ass right now. 260. Fans are going as hard as they can up here, that's for sure. I love this car. I can't believe how much car you get for the money. It's a machine. This video is brought to you by Nokian Tires, a leader in safety and sustainability. Maximize performance and efficiency with their made in USA all-season tires and their dedicated Hakkapeliitta EV winter line from the inventor of the winter tire. Learn more at nokiantires.com/EV. Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. You join me in Germany with a Kia EV6 GT. Now, if you remember a few months ago, Alyssa and I reviewed this car, not this exact one, obviously, in Colorado and had a blast in it. Was truly blown away with how spicy this car is. Unbelievable 570 horsepower, but beyond that, the suspension calibration and the electronic limited slip diff in the rear really made this thing like a drift machine. It was so balanced, so fun. I could make the car understeer or oversteer. Total control over it. And Kia has also upped the thermal management system with the GT. It has a different rear motor than standard. It's got a lot of upgrades throughout the whole thing. Actually, a different front motor than standard as well, I believe. So, and they really went out of their way to make this thing as spicy as possible. So we're going to test that in this video. We're going to give it the ultimate stress test here in Germany. The car is currently sitting at 0% state of charge. We're going to charge it up to 100, which is the best way to heat up a battery pack. We're going to do everything wrong, and then we are going to send it, it's the middle of the night, on some de-restricted Autobahn and see how far we can go before it falls on its face and thermal limits. And then, of course, we'll plug it back into a charger and see what happens. Really just going to give it the beans and see truly how spicy the EV6 GT is. Well, you joined me at a Fastned station with the EV6 GT, and I've been driving this car all day. We went to tour castles. It's actually Alyssa's birthday today, and we ripped it down to southern Germany, supercharged it at a Tesla supercharger, with which many of you guys who are nerds know only goes up to about 500 volts. This battery pack is about 700 volts dead, maybe 800 volts full. And so you actually need to use something called a booster in order to charge on a Tesla supercharger. Interestingly, Kia, Hyundai, Genesis, this E-GMP platform, they use the rear motor's inverter. It's a silicon carbide inverter, really nice unit, to actually step up the voltage into the battery pack. It's nicer than having a separate booster like the Wonderbox and the Lucid, or I'm trying to think, Porsche Taycan has a booster that splits pack voltage or doubles it, basically splits the pack voltage for DC charging. This one uses the rear motor inverter. However, in the GT version, it seems to be limited to 50 kilowatts. We were only getting about 44 kilowatt peak versus GV60 and Ioniq 5 that can do about 100 kilowatt peak. So, interesting news on this booster topic, actually. Just had to make a quick interruption. It seems that Tesla has recognized when you plug in an E-GMP vehicle to a Tesla supercharger, at least here in Europe. I really want someone to try this with Magic Dock, and they now limit the maximum power. Previously, Hyundai, Kia, Genesis vehicles were very buggy charging on superchargers. They had a lot of interoperability issues. Truly, it was weird, and it had something to do with the communication with the booster in the car and the max power that it could send. And so the general consensus is, well, maybe Tesla notices when you plug one of these in. Every car has a little bit of a fingerprint, a little bit different, sort of message when you plug in. It's not a perfect VIN verification, but they can get an idea when you plug in an E-GMP car, and then they limit the maximum supercharger output to roughly 50 kilowatts. I'm not sure if that's true. You guys need to do some testing. All I know is I only got 42, 44 kilowatts charging on a version 3 supercharger. And some of the folks are saying if I went to a version 2 supercharger, which still uses the rear motor inverter's booster, those haven't had buggy issues. Again, in Europe, version 2 chargers have CCS connections as well, then I would have gotten the full 100 kilowatts, or at least 90, 95 kilowatts. Very interesting to see what's going on here. I don't have the full story, but just keep an eye on this. It's possible Tesla is having a hard time charging these cars on version 3 infrastructure and is limiting the charging power to prevent failed charging sessions. Not sure, just speculation. If you see anything, tag me on Twitter. So here's what we're going to do. We have the car completely dead. The battery is warm. The way I know it's warm is it was running battery cooling on the drive in here. So we have been sending it, just on the way over here, not super hard, but cruising at 200 kph, something like that. And, it's a toasty battery. Typically, I would have my OBD dongle to show you all of the data as I typically do when I review cars. I lost it. I got to order another one. Don't know where it is. And I almost didn't want to do the video because I didn't have the dongle. But I thought, okay, we can still get a good impression as to derating based off of the data we can get in the car. We don't need CAN data to do all this. So what I'm going to do is plug in the car. We're going to juice it from 0 to 100% at an Alpitronic hypercharger. These are the 300 kilowatt ones. It'll give the car everything it wants. You guys know these things have an amazing charging curve. I'm going to keep the air conditioning off for the climate in the cabin for this charging session. We'll let it cool the battery as much as possible. And then we're going to jump on the Autobahn and send it. And I'll tell you a little bit about the EV6 GT along the way, because it's been great living with this car for the last few days here in Germany. So many great impressions of EV6. We've done a lot of stories on it, and the GT just turns it up to 11. So let's plug it in, activate the Fastned charging session, and get to work. So it is fairly expensive here. There's a 40 euro pre-authorization and 69 cents per kilowatt hour. That is euro pricing right there. We don't see that in the US at all. But we've just plugged it in. It's going to be activating the session here momentarily, and the Alpitronic unit should rip. I forgot. First of all, let's put it into English, and we have to select the plug, which I think this is maybe the only downside of Alpitronic. Do I need to push it in to make it latch? Kia ChargePort has been slightly temperamental with needing a quick push on the latch, and it says disconnect plug. So, didn't work. I think I may have not had it in all the way. You can hear it trying to latch and unlatch. Let's try it one more time and we'll get the session going. I think that means we now have an $80 pre-authorization. That's just crazy, isn't it?
That's a lot of money.
A lot of money. 80 euros, so almost $100 just to get the thing started. Now, of course, that goes back over time, but we probably have a couple $1,000s worth of pre-authorizations this trip just from all the charging we've been doing. So here we are. We are now officially charging. You can see we are at 0% state of charge. We're doing 60 kilowatts and ramping. Seems about right to me. It'll walk its way up as I can get a little bit more. Thank you there. 207 kilowatts. Oh, I guess because we paid with a card. Nope, we're good. We get the full screen. 1%. Well, we're going to do a full 0 to 100% charging session. There's no need to log it because I've already done so many EV6 and Ioniq 5 0 to 100% charging sessions. The biggest thing is I just don't want anyone to plug into this right here. We actually met two BMW engineers, two ladies working on the electrical system of the BMW iX, just doing some validation. So great to meet them. Super nerds, love EVs. We were chatting for a little while, yeah, they had just pulled out. So all good stuff here. We're just singing along at 213 kilowatts right now, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more than that as we get some pack voltage in it. Typically the EV6 doesn't like to take more than 300 or 320 amps, something like that, if I remember correctly. So let's let it juice up. It's going to heat soak the battery pack, and then we're going to get on the highway and send it. Well, we are just a few minutes into the charging session now. We are already at 17%. Doing 220 kilowatts right there. You can see as pack voltage is coming up, so is our charging power, and we've added 15 kilowatt hours in 5 minutes. That's not the class leading. We've seen Lucid do more, we've seen Taycan do more. However, this thing can really hold it deep into the battery pack, especially when you turn climate control off. One thing we've really noticed with the E-GMP cars is a little bit of rapid gating, especially on a hot day. And again, I haven't tested this on the GT, partially is why I'm doing this test, is just so I can make some general inferences when I'm testing the cars. But the The standard car, when you run climate control, pretty much diverts half the cooling power to the cabin and then half the cooling power to the battery. And so to get the fastest charging, you kind of need to have everything optimal, and that means you're not cooling the cabin. Now the EV6 GT, I'm pretty sure, has an upgraded cooling system, so maybe it's not that big of a deal, but we're gonna find out today for sure. We got multiple charging to do and a lot of high-speed driving coming up. We are charging along now, 223 kilowatts. I feel like normally we would see 230, 240, something like that. I just heard the AC compressor kick on the Kia. So we have just the parking lights on, but fans are going as hard as they can up here, that's for sure. Well, in just 12 minutes, we are at roughly 50% state of charge. It's still ripping along, but I do feel like we are coming off the peak slightly, maybe due to temperature, but you know, even worst case, like we'll definitely get the worst case after we send it, you know, after this run. But I've been driving this car hard. And again, it was ripping battery cooling on the drive in here. It was doing about 1 kilowatt. The compressor was spinning quite high. So even with that considering, I feel like this is doing better than the standard cars would have. I remember those really having some issues charging when they were hot and then also charging when they were cold. This one does have the preconditioning update, which is so needed because these batteries charge perfectly. They charge amazing. They are class leading when they are in a certain temperature range. You come out of this perfect temperature range and the charging performance drops significantly. Honestly, that's the case for almost every EV on the market. Okay, maybe not Fat e-tron because they put so much cobalt in that particular one, but you know, in general, that's fairly normal. These just charge so freaking fast. And this car is so freaking fast. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, I'm sorry to keep bringing you up, but this is worth noting. Here at 60% state of charge, down to 117 kilowatts. Definite thermal limitation right there. Ooh, we have really gotten this thing hot now. It is thermal limiting like crazy. Again, this is too early for it to do the battery check, so it's only doing 31, 32 kilowatts here at 66%. So it got enough on a road trip to juice up and go, but man, I really wish I had my OBD dongle with me right now. It's all I want. It's all I want. But damn, it's really down on the floor right now. 31 kilowatts. I imagine it's going to take the opportunity to cool off the battery, and then we'll see charging ramp up again. Guess what? We're back, baby. It's just a few minutes later. We're already back up to 117 kilowatts. Love to see it. So yeah, I've seen this with EV6 quite a bit because I've driven them hard. They come up, they get hot, they fall on the floor, they cool off the battery, they come back up again, they get hot, they fall on the floor. Still not as good as Taycan or Tesla in this particular scenario. How often will you find yourself in this scenario? Honestly, with an EV6 GT, I think more often than others. The car needs better cooling, I can tell you this already. What? Why did it stop charging? Did it run it? Did I hit my 40 euro maximum? Is that what happened? I think that's what happened. I have to restart a charging session because I've hit the maximum pre-authorization. That's not a good thing. Fastned, you really got to fix that. Sorry, that sucks. That's not the user experience people need to have. We are now plugged back in. Half this video is just going to be us charging, but I'm curious to see how fast it'll go now on a re-plug in. Already doing better than before. 135, 143. Damn, ripping along. And it'll do this until it hits max cell temperature and then come back down. But look at that. 166 kilowatts at 72%, better than before. We have now reached 100% and it has finished charging. So time to get in the car, start it up and hit the road. Well, we just did a deep 0 to 100% charge on this thing. Again, not something I'd recommend you do all the time, but interesting nonetheless. We are at 100%. We do need some climate, so let's go like 20 degrees on relatively low fan, something like that. And then off we go then. There's a few different drive modes that we can select in this car as well. I'll walk you through them on the way over to the Autobahn, but I don't want to delay because it already is a little over 1 kilometer or something like this to the charging, to the de-restricted Autobahn. Nice Taycan 4S BBPL. PL means Porsche Leasing, which means they're probably a Porsche employee. Pretty neat. A lot of company cars in Germany, I think, or they work for a company that leased it from Porsche. That's always common as well. But PL is Porsche Leasing, PE is Porsche Experience, GO is the press cars, and this is a hydrogen truck, I believe. It's been really cool. The EV charging station is across the street from a hydrogen truck refueling station, and we've been seeing hydrogen trucks like crazy filling up. Okay, so vehicle settings. Let's come over here to settings, vehicle, drive mode, my drive mode. We have the motor in maximum. We have the suspension in the middle setting, just so it absorbs some bumps. We have the steering in the middle setting. We have the limited slip diff in the middle setting, which is better for stability and not so much for drifting, but better for stability. And we have ESC full on. Now that happens when I click this GT button. We're in GT mode, but if I click it again, we're now loaded up into these drive mode settings. So we should be good to go. We do have pretty poor headlights, I would say. They do matrix function a little bit, but really only in some wider sections. It's not like some of the really nice Audi headlight stuff, but that's to be expected. It is a Kia. No shade there, but it is true. And but you know, on low beam, look, you can barely see in front of the car. It's like they really need to be raised up quite a bit. Anyway, let's pause for a second because I need to figure out which direction we have to go, and then we'll do just that. Okay guys, we are now merging on the highway. Just because we're at 100%, I'm also going to hit this maximum power output mode. Boom, optimizing battery temperature. Now typically this would warm up the battery, but I'm fairly certain it's going to cool down the battery. But either way, it says maximum power output. It's what we want. It's probably not the best suited option for this, so I may turn it off. Because we want it to cool the battery as much as possible for like a track day scenario, not to have it warmed up all the way for the fastest acceleration, but then we'd hit thermal limits pretty quickly. I have the vehicle in my mode right now, so let's just give it some beans. Wow, so much acceleration as we merge over into the left lane here. Very crazy. Let's get into the left, foot down. Whoa, 100 miles an hour now going past and more. Crazy speed, just getting settled in. I see some flashing lights up here in the right, so we're just gonna hang in the left in case people need to come over, or if it's a wide load. Typically you don't want to drive in the left lane, of course, but yeah, there's just some construction vehicles coming through here. Now we can pop in the middle. So watch this, 100 miles an hour, 160 kph. Alyssa, you ready to nail it?
Yep.
All right, full throttle. 170, 180, 190, 200, 360 kilowatt power output, 220, oh my goodness, 230, 240, 250, we are hauling ass right now, 260, 263, 265, 267, and we have hit the speed limiter. I'm on the brakes because there's a corner. I'm merging into the right lane. These low beams are way too low. One thing that I really appreciate now, you really get why Germans design cars for this market. For example, in Taycan and Audi, as you go faster, the headlight beam actually outputs more, even on low beam, so you get some more distance. But basically, we're going to be just cruising like this, just flat out, 227, 230. Wow, hauling ass through here. Full send in the EV6. I have to say, it's not as stable as maybe the Taycan is. That car's unbelievably stable at these speeds. Just keeping slightly left for this truck so we don't blow the doors off of it. But yeah, wow, really moving along just fine here. Just a dab of high beams to see where the corner is. We're just sitting at 200 kph. Now, I can turn the suspension up a little bit, but it doesn't seem to help with the suspension deflection. But just still, the acceleration at 220 is great. Maybe 240, it really starts to fall on its face. Now, earlier in testing, Alyssa, you and I noticed some insane regen as well. We saw, what was the peak that we saw?
356.
356 kilowatt regen. Really spicy. And again, we have to give Kia props because we just did a huge DC fast charging session, and here we are up to top speed, and it's taking the abuse. 250 kilometers an hour, nearly 160 miles an hour on the top end, 155 or so. Again, just moving left so we don't blow the doors off of some people. You want to travel in the rightmost lane. You know, here we are just cruising at 230 like nothing, and I'm just giving it half throttle. No issues at all. No thermal issues. Battery cooling is on, half a kilowatt of battery cooling. It's even less than before when we started. So we just have a guy pulling in front of us. Maybe you should check your mirrors. Yeah, just got to be mindful of other traffic. You can't just go full send everywhere. It's full send considering safe operation. We're back up to 250 kilometers an hour now. Really moving along. Wow, 260. Just slowing for the crest because we couldn't quite see. You can see the Matrix headlights doing their thing. Back up to high speed. Moving left so we don't blow the doors off these trucks. This is really riveting. Whoa. Your impressions, Alyssa, please.
Terrifying.
Why?
Just because it moves around so much. It's not very stable, and traffic is traffic.
I wouldn't say it's unstable, but I would just say you really appreciate how Porsche tunes cars.
Right, yes.
Okay, gotta get back in the left lane. Here we go. And back to full throttle. 200 kilometers an hour now. We are wide open. 220. Interestingly, the air conditioning just got really cold. And I think what's happening is it's using the same cooling loop for the cabin as it is the battery pack. And it's icing up the cabin here. We're just going to have to go a little bit slow around the outside of the corner. I say a little slow. We're doing, 115 miles an hour, 110 miles an hour, something like that. We'll merge into the middle lane. Wow, really impressed. There's an i5 test car we just passed in the mirror. They're just doing normal cruising. Back into the left lane. We'll just pass everyone at, a much lower speed than the maximum. And back to full power on the uphill. Look at that, 360 kilowatt output. Still, it's giving us everything. Of course, this car cannot do full power output up to top speed. It gives us really a lot more at lower speeds, but that's the case for almost every electric car. You can't juice the motor as hard when they're spinning. But we're already down to 82% state of charge. I'll definitely let you know the efficiency figures when I can. Wow, very stable through this corner, I have to say as well. Feeling nice. Back to full power. Back up to 240. There seemingly is someone in the left lane for no reason, but we're not allowed to pass on the right, so we'll just get in the left and see what's going on over here. I think they're going for a slow pass here is what it appears like. We're not going to come up, but look at that, 160 kilowatt regen even at 80% state of charge. Actually, if I get on the brakes a little bit harder, let's just see what it'll do. Look at that, 319 kilowatts at 81% of regen. 400 kilowatt output right there at a little bit lower speed. Amazing. Just sitting again now at 200 kph for the corners. We can merge into the middle lane as we get back to full power. Full send nation. Still outputting almost everything it can. And a little bit of braking. 335 kilowatt regen there. Again, especially with these flashing lights, we just want to take it easy, give everyone room. But we're really heat soaking this battery pack doing these big regen and big power output situations. Just going nice and slow, past everyone, giving as much room as needed. Full power now, past 200 kph, 360 kilowatt output, still giving us everything. Wow, it just rockets up to speed. It is crazy. Dodging in the full left lane for a second. It almost looked like this guy was making a lane change, but he wasn't. This guy definitely is, has his left blinker on. We'll grab that regen paddle as we just shove a little bit of speed off, and we come into a speed zone. 120 kph now, pulling the left paddle for maximum regen as we come down to a normal speed. Now, what we need to do is check our since charging information now. So we went 31 kilometers and it was 611 watt hour per kilometer. So that is got to be close to, 1 mile per kilowatt hour, something like that. And I can actually set auto steer and active adaptive cruise for the traffic jam now. Wow, and you can see the battery care has upped its cooling power, 1.32 kilowatts now. Still not very much at all. We're gonna keep going. We're 25% into the test, down to 75% state of charge roughly. And man, this thing is a beast. You give it some open road, an EV6, a Kia shredding down the Autobahn as hard as this car. Yeah, sure, it's not as stable as a 911 Turbo S or a Taycan Turbo S or a Lucid Air would be, but factoring the price of this car, Alyssa, it's very hardcore.
It is very hardcore. And then we knew that from the last video in my hair G-force aerometer.
It's crazy. Honestly, I expected this thing to fall on its face as soon as we got on the highway, because Taycan does that after a 0 to 100% charge. Turtle mode after just a couple minutes. This may have better thermal longevity than Taycan.
That's impressive.
Just on initial glance. I just know Taycan so well in this environment. Just kicking off cruise control, back to full power, huge power output, 418 kilowatts there. Wow, sending it. 200 kph already. Someone's merging into the middle lane up ahead. We'll get to the full left. At these speeds, very rarely do cars come up behind you, but as the saying goes, there's always someone faster than you on the Autobahn. As we rip down here at 260 kph. Whoa, shifting along just great. Wow, love that 300 kilowatt regen just by tapping the brake pedal, doing some nice blending. Back to full power. Wow, this thing moves along. I just don't want to blow by cars at stupid speeds. We want to keep it safe. We don't want the differential speeds being anything crazy. We're doing 125 miles an hour past other cars, but honestly, they're moving along great too. And this guy in the middle lane seemingly as well. So back to full acceleration on the uphill. Wow. Dab a regen paddle for the corner. This is what Germany is all about, folks. I can do this all day. In fact, I have been doing it all day. It's amazing how fast this car is for the price. That's the real magic sauce right here. What we really need is a Model 3 Performance to compare it against. That would be the ultimate test. Maybe next Euro trip we'll do more comparisons. Just coming off the speed a little bit for some of these cars. Hard power, still 365 kilowatt output, no signs of thermal limiting, and we've been doing, again, these huge regen hits of 250 kilowatts or more, and then back to hard power as soon as this fan gets out of the way. Boom, 386 kilowatt output. It's taking it like nothing. Crazy. It's so good. Wow. Full send. Oh yeah, we still have it in max battery temperature mode, so maybe we need to just leave it in this mode. Maybe that's the key. I forgot all about that. I was going to take it off of maximum power output mode, but nope. Alright, so basically this is what we're going to be doing for as long as possible until we get to a few more exits up. We'll turn around, head back to the Fastned station. 260 kph. 267 is the speed limiter. And yeah, same as Taycan Turbo, 267. A little bit bit of a bumpy road, slowing down for it. Is this a Taycan on the right-hand side or a 911? It's got a single light bar in the back. Looks very Porsche-esque. Yep, 911, nice. Targa as well, always a favorite. Can he keep up with the Kia? Let's find out. In the dust. Of course, you never want to race on German roads. That would be highly illegal, and we are not. We're just going faster than other traffic. But it's not a race, it's just a drive. And a really fun one at that. As we just sit cruising. This car really feels good at about 230, 235. When you get up to 255, okay, maybe it starts to get slightly unstable up there, but 230 is great. All right, we're gonna flip around and we'll see you guys on the way back to the truck. Just on the return, as we got up towards Ingolstadt, there's a late night speed limit, so we actually had to cruise one exit through. So we got a few kilometers of cool down. Again, it's not always a perfect science. This guy is hauling ass right up here as well. But look at this, 250, and we're barely passing this guy. He's flat out in the A3. As we pop in, that's where you can really feel this thing. At 260, it really starts to move around. I'm not sure if it's aero or honestly, it feels like a lot of suspension deflection, especially for the corners. Now, of course, I can bump up the damper to full stiff, but that doesn't actually help us much with this, sort of deflection in the bushings of the car. That's just sort of a damper change, if you will. So anyway, we're still cruising along, flat out, 330 kilowatt power output. It's showing no sign of getting hot or derating at all. Honestly, it's an incredibly impressive powertrain, just based off of this initial test and knowing how I've been driving the car and treating it just before. It still gets right up to 360 kilowatts, which is all it will do above 200 kph or so, even when it's cold. It's so freaking good. The corners definitely can't go as fast as you can in other cars. It feels really spicy. It almost feels like, it's just, it wants to like slide everywhere, which you don't really want that feeling cruising down the highway. I'm not saying it wants to slide out or anything like that. I'm just saying you can tell that this is an oversteering, tossable, hot hatch, if you will, hot SUV. And it's just not tuned for maximum stability. But I think it's worth the compromise because there's very, very few cases you'll be driving it this fast. Just taking it nice and easy, of course, past other traffic. When it's open, we go up to top speed, but we're just keeping it well above 200 kph whenever possible, which is still quite stressful on the entire system. And it's coping wonderfully. We are now down to 26% state of charge, and I'm noticing our top speed has come down from 267 to 257. Also, I'm noticing our power output is being decreased close to 290 kilowatts instead of 360 at the same speed. However, I don't think this is due to temperature. I think this is purely just due to state of charge limitation. Of course, with these cars, as you lose state of charge, you actually lose your performance with any electric car, more or less, other than maybe an LFP battery pack. And so, yeah, our regen performance is still very good, 250 kilowatt regen there consistently, which makes me think, okay, our limitation is more state of charge, because I'm floored. That's 297 kilowatts, 293, 288. Yeah, might be more state of charge than thermal. But we're still shifting along great, 23% state of charge. Look at this thing, still cooking. Just popping in the left lane for some of these trucks. I mean, that's wide open throttle, still doing 240. It's not slow. That's pin, 250 kilowatt output, 250 kilometer an hour top speed. Doesn't want to do much more than this. 251, 252. It was definitely popping up to 260 very easily by that time. Getting into the brake there is a thermal limit, 240 kilowatt regen there, but didn't see any more. Let's go back to full throttle. Once it comes to a straightaway, we'll hit a regen test. Oh, I'm feeling a big limit here at 19%. Let's go hard brakes. What are we getting regen-wise? I think we're thermal limiting now. It's still doing really well, but if you notice, the friction brakes were kicking in. We left some pad deposits, as is common, and you get some wobbling on the brakes where, yeah, you can see power output only 230 kilowatts. It's feeling slow. Feels like a standard EV6 now, which only does about 180 kilometers per hour. And this one's still rocketing past that, even with the limits. I'm going to keep driving it as hard as I can, and we are going to exit back to where we need to go, which I believe is the next exit, and we'll throw it on the charger and see what happens. We have just pulled off the exit to get to the charging station. We're currently at 17% state of charge. Definitely have some thermal limits. The most I could get it to regen coming off the exit was about 190 kilowatts. So yes, not only were we at low state of charge, which limits our power output, things were also getting hot. But we also just went pretty much full send in a lot of places, over 200 kilometers per hour for the majority of that drive. 108 kilometers of driving in under 40 minutes is pretty good, I would say. And average, of course, we hit that speed zone in Ingolstadt. We had a couple construction zones on the way back that lasted for maybe 3 minutes each, and then it was just full send other than that. We're going to the left up here, and then I believe off to the right up ahead. So we're pretty much coming off the Autobahn red hot. We're at 16% state of charge. Let's see what happens when we plug it into the charger. We definitely hit some limits down there for sure. As we're coming into the charger, I actually just kicked climate control off, and I noticed battery care initially went to 0 and it reconfigured where it was sending its coolant, and it's now shot up over 2 kilowatts, which is the most battery care we've seen for cooling. If I turn climate on, you'll notice they both go back to 0 as it reroutes the air conditioning, and then battery care will ramp up, I think 1.2, 1.7 kilowatts, something like that. 1.17 is the maximum it can do. Just have to get across this intersection here. You can see up ahead we're pulling into the FastNed station. Sometimes this battery care and the AC compressor take a second to spin up. I'm certainly not feeling any cold air coming out of the vents at the moment. What? Okay, anyway, we're at 15% state of charge. Low battery icon is on. We'll just do a little 3-point turn on the way in. So let's get her in here. Boop, boop, boop. And I just saw battery care actually turn back on. So if I get rid of this parking, I have to go back to the EV menu, and then I click this one, energy information, this one again, energy consumption, 0.08 kilowatts. Not as much as before. Don't know what's up with that. Let's plug it in and see what happens. I genuinely have no idea. This is half the fun of doing my job. So we did 111 kilometers to get back down to 15%. So what is that in miles? We went from 100 to 15% in 70 miles, something like that. And it took about 43 minutes, I think is what it was saying. I'm going to activate this station. We're good to go. It was 565 watt hour per mile average, which actually is better than I was expecting. We are now plugged back in, authorized, clicking. Car, it knows it's at 15%. How much power will it give it? My guess, everything. But I think we'll see an earlier derate than around 66% like we saw last time. And we should really base that off of kilowatt hours added or time at high power. Anyway, it's not super scientific, but it is interesting. Look at that, right up to almost max speeds. Not quite, 209, 210. So it's not the fastest it could be. And I don't know if you can hear it, but AC compressor is running. Now, what I want to do is as soon as it tapers on this charging session, just for fun, I'm going to unplug it and rip it on the highway and see if we get similar thermal longevity. Because I think also charging it up to 100% state of charge gave it some opportunity to cool down as it was getting less charging power up top. So let's do it sort of out of spec style, where we charge it until it tapers and then rip, simulating truly a German nighttime road trip or a track day. And that's what I want to test now. So let's do that next. Well, my suspicion has been proven. I've just been watching this thing at 25%. It shot down to about 109 kilowatts. Now at 29%, 4% later, it's still at 110. So it's definitely limiting. The big question will be is, does it go down to 30 kilowatts where it really thinks it needs the cooling, or can it maintain 100? I still think we're at too low state of charge to head back out on the Autobahn at the moment. I want to charge it to at least 50% where we can get good power. 110 kilowatts, certainly we've reached the limits of the car. Just so surprised that we have the charging thermal limitations, but not while driving. It's also a relatively cool night, about 20 degrees Celsius, and the huge airflow of moving very quickly helps a lot. I think, honestly, that proves to me that Kia needs to upgrade the cooling package from a low-speed standpoint, maybe from an autocross if you're doing consistent low-speed ripping, or maybe at a racetrack where you have lower average speed, but higher acceleration, higher regen over and over. Could be interesting. And also just upgrading a cooling fan and AC compressor could take care of this. The most impressive part to me about this car, though, was when you're underway, when you're hauling ass, thermals were no problem really for our drive at all. I mean, again, we used almost the entire battery before we got to a thermal limit, which is incredibly impressive, especially considering I can overheat my Model 3, especially at those speeds, much quicker, to be totally honest. I haven't had a Plaid out on the Autobahn yet. I need to, but I know in Taycan, this did better than Taycan would have in the same situation. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without comparing the cars side by side, but I'm just so impressed with the thermals on this. Although while charging, yeah, this is where it's hit its toasty limit. It is now a few minutes later, and I have seen nothing like this charging session ever before. It's just sat at 100 something kilowatts, like what, low 110, 114, hasn't dipped down to 30 kilowatts. It's just kind of sat here. But my plan was roughly to charge to 50% state of charge like we are now, seeing no difference in the behavior. So I wonder if that's given the battery enough time to cool down. Typically, we would have already been to 80% or beyond in this amount of time, because it's 10 to 80 in 18 minutes, I believe, under ideal conditions, and we went from 15 to 50 in 15 minutes. So the car definitely knows it's warm. It's been running the AC compressor maxed out the entire time. Let's stop charging. Let's go blast back onto the Autobahn and see if, yeah, this thing is just red hot and there's no chance of recovery, or we're back to full power and full regen and it's cooled itself off during the charging session. Don't know what to expect, but this should be interesting. Let's do it. Okay, well, we've just unplugged from the charger. I figured we'd do a quick acceleration test on this empty road. So I have it in my mode, which is Sport Plus drivetrain, all the power, left foot hard on the brake, flooring with the right, off the brakes, full send. Oh, big limitation, 230 kilowatt output. And on the regen, no, we got 200 kilowatts there. That might be everything. Okay, so we have smoked it. How long will it last though? Let's go up a couple exits and see what happens. I mean, really, we're asking a lot of this car, a lot more than your typical user would expect out of an EV. However, when you make a sporty version, people will bring them to track days. They will do things like that. But I have to say, every EV has a limit, and this one is very high. I knew we were going to find it. I was going to make it overheat. And that's not a bad thing. Every EV is there. I didn't expect this to do as well as it was doing. This secondary charging session was fairly weak sauce, but other than that, I am fairly enthused. Okay, let's get back on the de-restricted section over here and give it some wide open throttle. Okay, back on the highway now. I am wide open throttle. Definitely not giving us more than 230 kilowatts there. Will it recover? That will be the big question. Still wide open throttle. 230 kilowatts seems to be the limit. I do have climate control on the inside, which is nice for comfort, but we're still over 200 kilometers an hour. You know, it feels very, very similar to Taycan in turtle mode, and maybe even a little bit more. When you really get Taycan red hot, sometimes 200 kph is the maximum. But here we are doing 230. I'm still floored. And that was on an uphill. And now we're at 240. still holding strong. Just sitting at 245, 247. I mean, it's definitely taking longer to get there, but it's getting right there. I'm still just pinned. Let's do a quick regen test, shall we? Maximum regen, 200 kilowatts. So it's definitely pulled back on both, but it's like the car hasn't fallen on its face, which is much appreciated. If the headlights would be a little bit brighter, that would also be much appreciated. Into the full right lane as no one is around. Back to wide open throttle now. Over 230. I see a speed zone up ahead. I'm going to keep it floored for as long as I can. 239, 240, 241, 242, and we're on the brakes for the speed zone. Maximum. Okay, 220 kilowatt there.
229.
229, and we're coming into a 100 zone. So we are really just whisking away the speed. So I think that concludes the video here, the extreme thermal test of the EV6. Alyssa, your thoughts as you've driven Taycan at the same type of situation, ID3 and some other electric cars as well. How do you think the EV6 fared?
Well, I mean, I definitely, within performance-wise and just keeping all the battery temperature stuff is really, really great. But the only thing that really worries me is that it's the stability at those top speeds. If you are tracking it, and I just feel like it's going to roll over at any point, in my opinion.
It's not. It's definitely not going to roll over.
I feel like it is.
I mean, yeah, you just got to get used to it moving around a little bit. It's just doing a dance. So you're also very used to Taycan at those speeds, which is just like locked. I feel like Model S is kind of like my Model S is like this.
Oh,
at
I
speed.
can't stand driving your Model S. It scares the crap out of me too. So
yeah,
I mean, it's very similar to that, just that wobbly feeling and a little bit of discomfort at high speeds. But if you're an experienced driver, sure. But if you're not, then no.
You just gotta let the car do what it wants to do, and you get used to it. And I'm already more comfortable with it. I would say certainly for a lap or two of the Nürburgring, it seems like it can do that. Anything more than that, if you're going to go throw it on a fast charger and then go back out and do some laps, it's going to need to sit and chill for a little bit, I think. And that's the case for every electric car right now. Model S Plaid will overheat around the Nürburgring. Taycan overheats around the Nürburgring. ID3 overheats around the Nürburgring. Why are the headlights going on when there's cars around? Even, so many electric cars overheat. I can't think of one that doesn't. So I would just say that the thermal limits of this car, what you're able to do when it's overheating, are even higher than almost any car I've tested. So the charging performance, it's a little bit of an opposite situation than Taycan. When you get a Taycan red hot, they have enough cooling actually to keep it charging like a monster. And if you guys want to see that, I did a whole road trip. I think it was 1,200 kilometers in a day, top speed, fast charging, over and over and over and over. And I go through the thermal management of the car, and it was incredible. This car would actually be a little bit worse at that. It would have good thermals for cruising along, but when you put it on a charger, you'd only get 115 kilowatts, it seems like, for your average charging power, whereas Taycan can still do 265, 270 when it's red hot. So, okay. Big difference on the charging speed, big difference on the price of the vehicle as well. Also, Taycan, when it overheats, you don't get that top speed like this. Honestly, this seems to sustain more power output for a track day for a rip down the Autobahn than Porsche. That's really impressive to the Kia engineers. And so overall, I would say I expected this car to not do so well, and it has blown away my expectations of just how hardcore it truly is. Ioniq 5N could be interesting because I think that makes even more power than this, which would mean maybe even quicker overheating. I'm not sure. Time will tell. But wow, that was really fun. No hardcore data, but we had an excuse to go fast down the Autobahn. We found the limits of the car, and the limits are very high. So nice work to the Kia thermal engineers. Definitely recommend this car from my side if you're going to be doing track days and you want an electric car to handle it. This is great, and maybe even better thermal longevity than Model 3 Performance. But my car is also kind of old and has built up a lot of resistance. Just my impression, this thing rips. This is a serious meatball. Alyssa, leave us on your final thoughts. You only have 8 more minutes left in your birthday.
No, I got 8 more hours because I'm an American.
Okay.
So anyways, yeah, it's a great car. Love the interior. Bucket seats definitely need some lumbar support.
Yes.
Headlights need some help.
Yes. Software needs some help.
Software needs
The
some
software
help.
needs all the help. That's the only main problem with this car. Software sucks.
But it gives all this good information, which is great.
It's 50 menus deep, and it beeps as standard every time you hit something, and nothing's integrated, and the route planning sucks, and the navigation sucks, and it's just like, wow. The hardware, though, the chassis guys did a great job considering like how fun this car is in the corners and stuff. Here, let's just do another quick on-ramp launch, shall we? Just come to a cheeky little stop, and left foot hard on the brake, flooring with the right. There we go, 297 kilowatt output, 303 into a corner. Look at that thing corner. That's where the magic of the EV6 is. It's not built for straight line speed. This thing is built to absolutely destroy mountain roads. And
we've proven that.
We've made a video about that. I love this car. Ioniq 5N might be more my cup of tea because it should be even slightly more hardcore. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see me driving one of those, especially after this test. This was a test for me, is like, could I buy the car for how I drive it? The answer is absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think it would be a great track car for sure, and handles well, and maybe with some modifications it would get rid of the uncertainty we feel at top speed.
I think you might feel it more than me because I'm not noticing it anymore now that I'm used to. I trust the car a bit more.
I still don't have trusted it.
Yeah.
But my main thing is just traffic. You never know.
Well, we have no speed limit, so we'll end the video. Lights off on the cabin. Look at that, 328 kilowatt. Even just that little, rest of us getting off the highway has been enough for it to get up to giving us almost back to full power. Hell yes. Through the corner, popping in the left lane just to give us a little bit more room. Back to full power. Oh yeah, this thing boogies. Absolutely motors. Regen test. 273, 275, 286 kilowatts. Power test. 327. We're almost back to full power. It just needed a little rest. It's incredible. I love this car. I can't believe how much car you get for the money. It's a machine. See you on another one soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Just to show you guys right at the end of the video, this is really interesting too. We took it a little bit easier on that return trip. Like, still ripped it, but we were in a construction zone towards the end and I took it a little bit more gently. We're still doing 190 kilowatts at 58%. So it's like if you're really flat out in it, yeah, you'll toast it. But if you just hold back a tiny bit, it seems to just run flat out all day. Call me impressed. For the money, for what this car goes for in the US, half the price of a Taycan, not a base Taycan, but an equivalently powerful Taycan, half the price. I mean, you're getting top-notch EV powertrain thermal tech. The Lucid would have overheated by now because I overheated that car just driving normally and DC fast charging normally. Yeah, this thing's got some cred. I hope to see these out on track. I hope to see these sending it up and down the German Autobahns because people do rip their EVs around here. I'd love to see it. Dude in an Audi SQ8 e-tron just bombing down the road earlier. It was awesome. So I'd love to see that. And I know this video is dragging on, but truly this was a test for me especially in preparation for maybe an upcoming Ioniq 5N or something spicy to come to our garage. I wanted to know if the cars can handle the abuse. These cars can handle the abuse. Nice work to the Hyundai Kia Genesis engineers, especially in the GT version. Gives a thumbs up for. Wait, the video's not over. I just found a trick. I was talking to Brandon Flash. He says if it's a heat pump Kia EV6, which this is, crank the heater inside the cabin to max. We are there. And like 2 seconds after I did that, of course we shot up a little bit. We were doing about 105 kilowatts. Now we're at 123. Yes, the heater is going to take some power, but it's also helping cool the battery pack, because now if you listen, the AC compressor is spinning at even a higher RPM than we've heard all day, and that is helping with the charging session. This really only works if you have a heat pump car, would be my guess. If you have a PTC EV6 or Ioniq 5, it shouldn't make a difference in this case. But that is a cool little trick if you have a heat pump car, to get it to basically take all the waste heat, put it to the cabin, spin up even higher, cool the battery pack more. You can crank the heater and you'll get higher charging power. How about that? And we're coming up to 80% where it's going to hit a ledge, but pretty sick stuff. Now we can end the video. Goodbye, good night. Happy birthday, Alyssa. Thanks for being a trooper. That was a great way to spend your birthday. Top speed. For me, at least. Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
We did see castles today.
Yes, I enjoyed my part of the birthday a lot, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye.